Ladies and gentlemen, in a few minutes we will begin the annual gathering of Remembrance. In keeping with the solemnity of the occasion and out of reference to the memory of the Jewish martyrs we honor, we ask that you turn off your cell phones, please, and we request that you refrain from applause or any public display during the commemoration. Your presence and respectful silence are most appreciated. I just want to mention that most of the songs that are being sung today you can find in your programs. Thank you.
My name is Rita Lerner. I am the daughter of 2 Holocaust survivors. My mother, Henny Dermashkin Gurko, was a survivor of the Vilna Ghetto. My father, Simon Gurko, survived in Siberia. I have been part of this commemoration for 28 years and have seen it grow to include the active participation of the 3rd generation, and that is how it should be. As you entered today in the synagogue, the music you heard playing in the background was my mother's music. Like so many of you, I began attending this commemoration with parents and other family members. With each passing year, there are fewer and fewer familiar faces. We honor their memory and the memory of all survivors who have passed away, leaving us to carry on their great legacy. It is vital to know that the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust, will always be at the forefront of this important observance. On behalf of the museum and its many partner organizations, we are grateful that you are joining us today. Together, we will remember and honor our Kedoshim who perished in the Holocaust. Before beginning our program, let me thank Rabbi Joshua Davidson, Mark Heitlinger, the staff of Temple Emmanuel for their warm hospitality. In addition, I would like to thank all the volunteers that are here today, as well as the staff of the museum, and especially to Rita Josephson for all their efforts. Once again, please silence your cell phones now if you haven't done so already. It is now my pleasure to introduce Bruce C. Ratner, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust.
Good afternoon, and I'd like to thank Rita and Ann for their leadership in putting together this very special day of remembrance. And I'd like to thank all of you for being here, for making your way to this beautiful temple, for coming together as a community on this very special day. Standing in front of all of you, survivors, their families, elected officials, and the greater community, I am painfully aware of how inadequate words are to describe our feelings and our thoughts on this Yom HaShoah. There are no words that can convey the horror of the event that we're gathered here to remember. There are no words that can adequately express the grief we still feel for those we have lost. And there are no words that can begin to capture the vast potential that was denied our people and robbed from this world by the Holocaust. Because even as we honor the lives of those who survived, we also mourn a loss that grows greater with time. As we consider generations never born, creativity never expressed, and achievement that could never be realized. And words cannot do justice today to what is in our minds and in our hearts. We are obligated to remember. Words become the way in which we share our memories. So we will do our best to describe the indescribable. But words are not all that we will share in our service today. We will share our music, we will share our prayers, and we will share our silence. And we'll share the glow of candles as the survivors and their families light them. And together we will shed tears, and together we will be with each other in our presence, knowing that as we each remember and grieve in our own way, we are not alone. We are a community united in grief for the ones we lost, a community united in gratitude for the survivors who've survived, and united in our commitment not only to remember, but to share our memories with each other, to share our memories with the next generation, and to share our memories with the world. Let us never forget. Thank you all for being here.
Please rise for the national anthems. Shayna Grossman, daughter of Ziona and Holocaust survivor Simone Grossman, Oliver Shalom, joins us today and will lead us in the Star-Spangled Banner and the Hatikvah.
Please sit. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ann Oster. I am a proud daughter and daughter-in-law of Holocaust survivors. We have been gathering together here for years, and it is our true honor to be with you today and share this commemoration with you and your families. Our observance is complemented by many participants from the third generation. This event enjoys the support of 19 organizations that help us inspire new generations. Talking of inspiration, 12 years ago I lost my husband Abe, and 5 months ago I lost my 37-year-old son Avi. I didn't think I would be able to open my eyes and see the sunshine again, but I've been inspired by the survivors. If they can do it, so can I. So to all the survivors here today, I thank you for giving me the courage and strength to lead my life. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Michael S. Glickman, President and CEO of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust.
Remembering the lives lost in the Holocaust is an act of resistance against the Nazis' attempts to dehumanize and destroy the Jewish people. The full horror of genocide is in its ambition not only to murder individuals, families, and communities, but also to wipe out the entire people to whom they belong, the people who could tell their story, acknowledge their humanity, and preserve their memory. In their attempt to obliterate the Jewish people, the Nazis sought to change the future and master the past. There would be no Jews to remember the Jewish people who were exterminated. There would be no Jewish perspective on Jewish history. No Jewish insistence that each life is important and should be mourned. Having been denied their humanity in life, victims of the Shoah would be denied it in death. There would be no survivors' voices or rallying cries. Today, we are still here. The Jewish people persist, and we refuse to forget. We will not allow the memory of millions to pass into stony silence. We owe it to our people, ourselves, and our children to insist that when we mourn those who were killed and confront those and comfort those who suffered, we tell their story with precision, accuracy, and the utmost of respect for human dignity. We will not contribute to an already enormous loss by allowing ignorance and prejudice to deny the complex lives that were brutally cut short or changed forever. We will not forget. Thank you for coming today for this annual gathering of remembrance. This Yom HaShoah event presented by the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust, is the largest gathering in the nation. It is my privilege to speak to you today as its president and CEO. The museum is New York's contribution to the global responsibility to never forget. I want to join what Bruce Ratner mentioned earlier and thank Rita Lerner and Ann Oster for their commitment to making this event possible each and every year. Recognize the many elected officials and dignitaries who are in attendance today, some of whom will speak to us later. And thank all of those who made today possible. I especially want to thank the Holocaust survivors and the family members of survivors who set an example with their presence here today to remind us how important it is that we remember. What should remembrance look like? How should it feel? We at the museum face the necessary challenge of representing the facts of the Holocaust while encouraging visitors to connect to history on a human level. The more than 30,000 items in our collection illustrate Jewish life, reveal Jewish self-reliance in the face of exclusion, and suggest that trauma of the extreme loss of the Shoah, These objects are ambassadors from a world that flesh and blood people created, inhabited, and fought to preserve. Visitors to our New York home can explore items that represent personal experience of global significance. Just as importantly, they can discover thousands of testimonies by Holocaust survivors, liberators, rescuers, Jews who served in the Allied armies during World War II, and many others. We are working to define the future of testimony-based Holocaust education, pioneering new ways to explore survivor accounts and oral histories. There is an urgent question at the heart of what we are doing. What will Holocaust education look like for future generations that don't have survivors in their neighborhoods, their communities, or in their families? The museum must take on an even greater role in allowing visitors to hear witnesses' accounts and make human connections mediated through technology and supported by artifacts. The museum's collections not only document the story of the Holocaust, but it also prevents others from falsifying its scope, magnitude, and significance. Even as the Nazis attempted genocide, they also targeted non-Jews they decided were of inferior races. They murdered communists, political enemies, and resistors. The museum's educational mission addresses the full scope of these crimes. 6 million Jews were murdered. 6 million ways of Jewish life were nearly stamped out forever. Documented facts of this history, original records, photographs, and witnesses' accounts are our strongest answers to those who deny or minimize the Holocaust. In our own time, we are seeing a rise in anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. We have to be vigilant. We protect the historical record, strengthen scholarship, promote understanding of Jewish heritage, and stand with vulnerable groups. And on days like today, voices from the past can inspire all of us to answer calls from the present. Yom HaShoah is a day on which we fulfill our sacred obligation to remember. It is also a time to let what we know of the past inspire our present priorities. Today we teach our children that they must remember, and we guide them to envision a world that's worthy of their futures. This is a project that is best undertaken together. My work at the museum has motivated me to reflect on the power and potential of gathering as a community. Earlier this year, for International Holocaust Remembrance Day, the museum hosted a community reading of Elie Wiesel's Night. The event brought the museum's largest public program audience ever, and people from around the world watched the live stream, making it a truly international remembrance. But even beyond what the event meant for the museum, it was a defining moment for me personally. I saw that days like today are powerful because they demand our presence, our attention, and our togetherness. They challenge us to think of how we carry out not only our personal, individual histories, but also the history of our people. The weight of this history can feel like a burden, but when that burden is shared, it becomes an important lesson in what we mean to each other. Thank you for being here, and thank you for helping me undertake the difficult and crucial work of remembering.
It is now my pleasure to introduce the Senior Rabbi of Temple Emmanuel, Rabbi Joshua Davidson.
If you are able, I would invite you to please rise and join me in prayer. Makor Chaim, source of life eternal, God in whom memory lives. We seek your blessing as we gather in this sacred place on this sacred day, the 27th of Nisan, which we Jews sanctify as a day of memorial for the 6 million of our people murdered during the years of the Shoah. A day of bitter mourning, the 27th of Nisan also recalls an act of unfathomable courage. For on this date, 74 years ago, the Jews of the Warsaw Ghetto were engaged in an uprising against their Nazi oppressors. And so, in a fashion, this is also a day which exalts the human spirit and our people's remarkable survival against those who sought to annihilate us. A day which calls us to raise our voices against those at home and abroad who would either deny the tragedy of the Shoah or artfully unlink it from Jewish suffering. Today, at this oldest, largest commemoration in our city, which became a haven for countless Jewish immigrants and survivors, we recognize the blessing of freedom that is ours and the sacred responsibility that attends it, to stamp out ignorance, bigotry, hate, and intolerance wherever they remain. In memory of those who perished, in honor of those they left behind, in gratitude to the survivors whose heroism inspires us, and in commitment to their children and grandchildren, may we fulfill that divine call to justice and compassion and remembrance. Amen. Please be seated.
Today we will hear from Rebecca Levy from our third generation. Rebecca's grandparents, Sima and Nathan Katz, are survivors of the Holocaust. Ladies and gentlemen, Rebecca Levy.
When I was a little girl learning about the Holocaust from my family and in school, I used to ask my parents and teachers, how could the world have let this happen? So often the responses I received were, there wasn't any television then. People didn't know exactly what was going on. I took comfort in thinking how, in the 1990s, there were lots of television and news sources. People were much better informed and could never let an atrocity of that magnitude happen again. My grandparents, Sima and Nathan Katz, survived imprisonment in the Shavel ghetto in Lithuania. With the help of an incredibly selfless and brave Gentile family, my grandparents and 5 other family members escaped the ghetto to hide on the Gentile family's farm for a year. Once liberated from Hitler's rule, my family escaped Lithuania, which was then ruled by Stalin, by traveling through Poland to a demilitarized zone in Germany. They found shelter at a DP camp there. Once they arrived in America in 1951, my grandparents devoted themselves to the concept of Zachor velo tishkach, remember and never forget. They became founding members of the Museum of Jewish Heritage and the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. Their commitment to Holocaust remembrance and education continued throughout their lives. In 2009, my grandmother endowed the Holocaust education seminars in memory of Nathan Katz at Yad Vashem. They did all this to ensure that the world will never forget. Are people forgetting? When our government issues a statement on International Holocaust Remembrance Day that doesn't mention the Jewish people, and then does not apologize for it, how does that impact how we remember? When our president's press secretary says that Hitler didn't use chemicals and refers to gas chambers as Holocaust centers, what are we signaling to the world and ourselves? How we remember the Holocaust is more relevant today than ever. Today, in this age of copious information, we have no excuse to not fully know about what's happening in our world. We are reading, seeing images, watching videos, and hearing about the innocent victims of evil regimes. We also know about the discrimination and violence people face in our own country based on religion, skin color, and countries of origin. The Gentile family who took in my family during the Holocaust did what was absolutely right at a time when so much was absolutely wrong. I used to think hypothetically about what I would have done if I were in their shoes. Would I have put my family at risk to save the lives of strangers? Luckily, we live in a country where we can take action and we can make our voices heard without putting ourselves in danger. But never again is not hypothetical. What would you have wanted the world to do in 1939? In memory of those who perished during the Holocaust, to honor the past and protect the future, I urge you, use your power and your strengths, financial, political, ethical, and take this opportunity in 2017 to do what you would have wanted the world to do in 1939. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Those were beautiful words. Not only are you beautiful, but your words were poignant, very significant, and very emotional. Thank you. I am now very proud to introduce Harry Whitland, a hidden child of the Holocaust, to address us today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harry Whitland. Today, I would like to tell you briefly about my life before and during and after the World War II. I was born in 1931 in the city of Żółkiw, Poland, near Lvov. I grew up in a Jewish home with my parents and my sister. May she rest in peace. May they rest in peace. In 1941, the Nazis invaded our town and changed our lives forever. Trains with Jews headed to gas chambers passed through our town, and many surrounding towns were Judenfrei. Those who tried to escape the trains were shot immediately. By the winter of 1942, the Gestapo was routinely searching homes, rounding up the Jewish men. My father, Abraham, would frequently run to an area behind the home and hide in the field. In the spring of 1942, barbed wire was going up. Of course, they built a ghetto for the Jews. The Nazi commander who searched our home and was accompanied by 2 troopers. The commander spoke with my mother. The Nazi commander who searched our home was accompanied by 2 troopers. The commander spoke with my mother, Clara. She was fluent in German. Which impressed the commander. He lingered and told her that your family's best chance to survive is to hide. The Nazi suggestion is what led to our escape. We didn't know where to go, so my father, being a grain dealer, reached out to a farmer he knew. The farmer's name was Jan Lukowski. Jan and his family were very, very poor, and they agreed to hide my mother and my sister in their barn. During this time, my father and I were wandering in the woods looking for thick bushes so we couldn't be seen where we were freezing, hungry, and swollen from exposure. Our skin soon covered with open sores. Every few days, my father would leave the woods and carefully go to the Lukowski home to get some food. Eventually, rumors of hidden Jews took root. My mother and sister had to leave and join us. The 4 of us wandered and hid together. With the rumors, we had to flee the general area of the locales, would search for us and hand us over to the Nazis. We were in even worse danger than before. One day, 2 Ukrainian security guards in charge of monitoring the woods showed up with their rifles, and we were ordered to undress and lie down. Instinctively, I ran to the woods and hid behind a tree To this day, I remember saying Shema over and over and over, thinking this was the end. But eventually, I continued to run, wandering alone in the woods for days. Collapsing, I heard a dog bark. Somehow, I recognized the bark. It was the Lukowski's dog. I begged for help, and Jan agreed to hide me. He dug a hole and covered me with hay. I lived in there for about 2 weeks. Once a day, a child's hand would reach through and hand me a container of milk. I never actually saw this child. Meanwhile, my father and I had another direction. While my mother and sister were chased by the peasants and held captive in the farmhouse, they were waiting to be turned over to the Nazis. Desperate, they somehow escaped through a window and searched the woods. They were eventually reunited with my father. Days later, they learned that I was alive, hidden with the Lukowskis. We were united. Jen and Magdalena never hid us again. It was too dangerous, so our suffering became much more severe. Throughout the remaining 2 years, the woods, the Lukowskis, remained our source of food and survival. I can't share all the details of hiding. We lived in ditches day by day, wandering by night, hungry, thirsty, exhausted, and always terrified. When the Russians liberated Zhukov in 1945, my sister and I were too weak to stand up. After the war, we settled in Munich. I went to school with about 40 other Jewish children, survivors. 3 of them are still alive, and we remain good friends. In November 1949, at the age of 18, we came to America and settled with my family in Brooklyn. Just a couple of years later, I was drafted and served in the Korean War, lucky not in a combat position. When I was discharged, I attended Baruch College and went to business. And that is briefly my story. In closing, I want to acknowledge that today the name Jan Lukowski and Magdalena are engraved in Jerusalem on the wall of the righteous among the nations of Yad Vashem. Without their help, we wouldn't have survived. Today, my 2 daughters, their husbands, and 4 out of my 5 grandchildren are here. The 5th one lives in Israel. And my sister's children and grandchildren are here with me. And just last week, Emilia Lukowski and I spoke, catching up with each other's lives. We write to each other often. Hers was the child hand that snuck me milk each day while I was hidden under the hay. I want to thank all of you for being here and listening to my story.
Thank you, Harry. It's an honor to have you with us today. The Temple Emmanuel Choir will sing Ani Ma'amin as 36 women survivors of the Holocaust light memorial candles. They are accompanied by 36 young people, many whom are children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, active members in the many young Jewish leadership groups volunteering here today.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome a number of dignitaries to the temple today, including Consul General of Israel in New York, Danny Dayan, Senator Charles E. Schumer of New York City Council Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito, Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, Consul General of Germany in New York, Britta Wagner, and Deputy Consul General of Poland in New York, Alicia Tunk. On behalf of the museum, thank you for joining us for this commemoration. It is now my distinct privilege and pleasure to introduce and welcome Ambassador Danny Dayan to offer remarks.
עת לחשות ועת לדבר. A time to be silent and a time to speak. Those were the words of Ecclesiastes, of King Solomon. And Yom HaShoah is one of those extraordinary days in which we have to do both simultaneously, to speak and to be silent. That's the reason why this evening in Israel, for 2 minutes, the whole country came to a silent standstill. And then in thousands and thousands of homes, from northern Israel to its southern parts, families gathered in homes to speak into the night about the Shoah, about the Holocaust. 4 obligations we have as Jews on this day. The first one is to mourn. This is not a day to raise flags. This is a day to bow heads. On the rivers of Babylon, said the psalmist, and I would paraphrase and say that B'Neharot Manhattan, on the rivers of Manhattan, we sat and we wept as we remembered Auschwitz. Our second obligation is to know, and not only for the sake of the future, not only because in the future we will not have survivors to hear from them directly. We must know also in honor of the victims. We owe it to them. We owe to the small Jewish community of Varkovich that we know how they were carried to the forest in a dark, cold night and executed, their bodies thrown into the river. We owe to the Jewish community of the Greek island of Crete that we know how they shipped in crowded boats and then in cattle trains for thousands of miles only to be gassed in Auschwitz. We owe to the congregation in Bialystok that was crammed into their synagogue and set afire, that we know what happened to them. Our third obligation, maybe the most difficult of all of them, is to try to feel. To try to feel what our brothers and sisters in Europe, what they went through. 2 weeks ago we read in the Haggadah, בכל דור ודור חייב אדם לראות את עצמו כאילו יצא ממצרים. In every generation, a person has to see himself or herself as if he or she went out of Egypt. And today, since the Holocaust, בכל דור ודור חייב לראות אדם את עצמו כאילו יצא מאושוויץ. in every generation has a person to see himself or herself as if he or she personally were liberated from Auschwitz. And in some symbolic way to try to take on us, to share with us part of the suffering, of the burden that our brothers and sisters endured. And the fourth obligation is to learn lessons from the Holocaust. And I want to say clearly, there are many lessons from the Holocaust. And each one of us, as far as he's a decent person, as long as he's a decent person, is entitled to his own lessons, to her own lessons. Some of them universal, some of them national, some of them regarding the others, some of them regarding ourselves. And אלה ואלה דברי אלוהים חיים. Those and those are the word of a living God. But I also have my lesson. And my lesson is that the future of the Jewish people is guaranteed only by a strong Medinat Israel, by a country, a sovereign Jewish nation. So even when we have criticism and even when we dislike this or that policy, let's not forget, as long as Medinat Israel exists, the words Leolam v'lo od, never again, will exist too.
We now invite Cantor Malavani up to the podium to sing Under the Polnische Kliniken Beimelach. The words can be found in your programs.
Die polnische Kliniken Beimelach spielen sich mehr nicht keine Moischalach Schleumalach spielen sich mehr nicht keine Sorelach Leialach nicht auf keine Gräserlach, nicht auf kein Schneealach. Silchen scheune mir nicht die jüdische Stimmalach, von die Kunde Simlach, Motalach, Schimalach, mit die zerkrellte, zerdrappete Zurlach, von dem Beweisen, von der ihm gevorlach. Streuer Nazint, die polnische Beimelach, teut seinen jüdische Heimen und Heimalach, teut seinen Gesalach, horbe die Eisalach, wo es verstecken sich Kinder wie Maisalach. spielen sich mehr nicht kein Meuschalach, Schleumalach. Spielen sich mehr nicht kein Sorelach, Lealach, nicht auf kein Gräsalach, nicht auf kein Schnee.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my distinct privilege to welcome the senior senator of the state of New York, Charles E. Schumer, to the stage. Senator Schumer.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I want to thank Michael Glickman for your kind introduction. And less than a year into your tenure as the Museum of Jewish Heritage's new president, you're doing a terrific job. I'd like to congratulate my dear friend, I saw him, Bruce Ratner, for the critical work the museum has been doing recently. It's now more important than ever. And I'd like to acknowledge Rabbi Davidson. Thank you for hosting, and your synagogue, your magnificent shul, for hosting this event every year. Now, each year on Yom HaShoah, we're called upon to do something that sounds very simple: remember. But this is more than a simple task of recollection. It's a moral imperative, one that is as sacred and holy as one of Hashem's 10 Commandments. We must remember the innocent victims of the Holocaust who cannot speak for themselves, whose memory calls down to us through the decades for justice. We must teach our children and the children of the world what happened to the Jews of the Holocaust, so that such evil is never revisited on our people or on any other people. As a young boy, I grew up learning about my great-grandmother. She lived in the Ukraine, was then part of Galicia. The Nazis invaded in 1941. They asked her, stormtroopers came to her home and asked her to gather her entire family. 17 people were on her front porch, elderly people to little children. She said to my great-grandmother, the matriarch of the family, the Nazis said, the stormtroopers, you must leave. She said, we are not leaving. They machine-gunned all 17 of them down. So many of us have stories like this. And though it is painful to remember and talk about, we must continue to do so. Because over time, unfortunately, the world forgets. In 2013, a survey of more than 53,000 respondents in 101 countries found that only 54% of the world's adults had even heard of the Holocaust. And of those, 1/3 believe it is either myth or greatly exaggerated. These are dispiriting numbers, but they remind us of the job we have to do. So when my wife and children and I travel to Europe, we make a point to visit the ghettos, whether it's Venice or Prague. The vast majority of the visitors, we ask people where they're from, what their name is, unfortunately are Jewish. Now, it gives me great pride that Jews are teaching their children, but where are all the others? Where are all the others? As I visit the Holocaust Museum in Washington, it's a bit different. I see school children from Iowa and Montana, and people around the world, people who are not Jewish, and it keeps me hopeful
that we are still teaching the children of the world. They are all confronted with that pile of shoes collected from the camps, that singular image of inhumanity of the crimes committed against the Jewish people. We cannot forget. We must not forget. Because it seems every time we think for a moment that we have entered a more enlightened era of tolerance, that age-old demon, anti-Semitism, comes back with new virulence. We have watched the specter of anti-Semitism rise again in Europe, where it seems to live in the soil as their original sin. They can't wash it out. Where echoes of our people's dark history across the continent grow louder and louder. But we have also seen much more anti-Semitism rear its ugly head here at home in America. The synagogues graffitied with swastikas and slurs, the Jewish cemeteries vandalized and desecrated. Let this be a stark reminder to all of us that we can never be complacent, that this vicious scourge can so easily creep back into our lives. In recent years, the importance of the Holocaust remembrance has also been amplified by the fact that we continue to lose so many members of that first generation of survivors. When I first started coming to this event, there were many more of the survivors lighting the candles than there are today. Last July, we lost the incomparable Elie Wiesel, who dedicated his life to giving voice to those who, unlike him, were not lucky enough to escape. He believed that describing the ghastly details of a single night at Treblinka could shake humanity from its indifference, to make sure the torturer never tortures again. Today, there are fewer than 100,000 survivors of the Holocaust left in the world. Fewer than 100,000. Some are here with us today. I hope God continues to bless you with many more years of good health and happiness. You are an inspiration to all of us and a blessing to the world. But the burden on us to remember is great. It is even greater on our generation and our children's generation to commemorate Yom HaShoah, because one day we will not have these incredible survivors to keep the memory alive. We will have to speak out louder, even more vigilantly, against any effort to minimize or erase the Holocaust in our history books and our memory. We will have to work even harder to shake the conscience of the world. This week, we finished celebrating Pesach, a holiday whose purpose is to remember and instruct future generations of Jews about the pains of slavery. It's fitting that Yom HaShoah falls on the calendar so soon after, because like the Jews who first entered the Holy Land after escaping Egypt, who wandered for 40 years to forget the pain of slavery, we are now called upon to keep the flame of memory alive, even though most of us are not witnesses. It's incumbent upon us to teach the world the meaning of the Shoah this year, every year, henceforward. We must actively remember the millions, men, women, children, murdered at the hands of the Nazis. The communities across Europe, utterly devastated and destroyed, the entire generations of Jews that never came to be, their promise never realized. We must ensure we fulfill our moral obligation to never forget as long as God breathes air in our lungs, so we are never witnesses to such darkness in the world ever again.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. The Hazimir International Jewish High School Choir, directed and founded by Matthew Lazar, will now sing Eli, Eli, based on the beautiful poem by Israeli national hero Hannah Senesh. Eli, Eli will be followed by the Yugen hymn.
Our memorial candlelighters are a testament to the strength and dignity that define the Medal of Holocaust survivors. As I read their brief biographies, and while their stories vary, you will note that each has created a life of meaning. Along with their families, they will light 6 candles in memory of those who perished and will be accompanied by the Temple Emmanuel Choir singing Es brennt, a poem by Mordechai Geberting that became the anthem of the underground movement. Ludwig Sheridan was born in Lvov, Poland in 1925. In 1943, he and his family were imprisoned in the Janoska concentration camp. His sister was killed by the Nazis before they started clearing the camp. With the help of Ukrainian policemen and a Polish cattle skinner, Mr. Sheridan's family escaped from the camp, fleeing to a farm owned by an acquaintance. They hid in a bunker at the edge of the barn, covered by wooden planks and thorny plants. The Jews hid there all day. At night, the Polish family brought them out to hiding, and they shared conversation, warmth, and food. Mr. Sheridan immigrated to New York City in May 1949. He is a retired meat and poultry dealer and has published a book entitled Eye to Eye, a memoir of the Nazi Holocaust in Poland. Ludwig Gelapter is from Stryd, Poland, now the Ukraine, where his father owned and operated a sawmill. During the war, German officers protected the Gelapter family in exchange for labor and management of the family's sawmill to aid the war efforts. The family escaped to Warsaw, and Ludwig and his parents hid in private apartments throughout the rest of the war. Following the war, the Gelapter family lived in displaced persons camps for 4 years. In 1949, they came to the United States, where Ludwig finished school and attended Columbia College. Ludwig and his wife Barbara have 4 children, 7 grandchildren, who live in Paris, New York, Washington, D.C., and California. Ludwig and Barbara currently live in Lafayette, Louisiana. Natalie Gonin was born in Poland, in the city of Chelm. She was hidden in a field in a bunker under a stack of hay for almost a year by a Polish family, then smuggled across the boat to the Ukraine. They were transferred to Uzbekistan and the Tashkent region of a small village. Natalie lived in a Polish orphanage for 2 years in the city of Lenin. In 1945, at the age of 9, she returned to Poland. Natalie lived in 4 displaced persons camps. She completed school in Israel and served for 2 years in the Israeli army as a first-rank sergeant. She arrived in New York in December 1959 and went to complete a 2nd degree in education from the New School for Social Science and Research. Natalie has been a docent at the Museum of Jewish Heritage since 1997 and a member of the Speakers Bureau. Dr. Solomia Cape was born in Lodz, Poland in 1926. In 1939, Dr. Cape and her family were forced to live in the Lodz ghetto, where they spent all 5 years of Nazi occupation. She was liberated by the Russians, who she credits to giving her back her life. Dr. Cape went to medical school and eventually became the director of anesthesia department at a hospital in Brooklyn. At the age of 82, Dr. Cape retired and now spends her time speaking about her experiences during the Holocaust at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. In addition to schools and universities, she also shares her story in Polish and has been invited to Lodz multiple times to be a speaker. Gabriella Major was born in Hungary. In 1944, Gabriella, her mother, and her grandmother were herded into Debrecen ghetto. After a few months, Gabriella was squeezed into a cattle car heading to Auschwitz. With a stroke of luck, her transport was mistakenly diverted, ending up in a concentration camp in Austria. Gabriella and her mother miraculously survived. Most of her family perished in the gas chambers of Auschwitz. In 1957, Gabriella came to the United States and became a social worker. Gabriella is grateful to have a large family, children and grandchildren who give her much joy and happiness. Currently, she is also a speaker and a docent at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. She feels a great responsibility to educate young people and adults about the horrors and the lessons of the Holocaust. Francis Malkin was born in Sokol, Poland, now the Ukraine, in 1938. Francis's earliest memories are being in the Sokol ghetto in 1941. Francis was hidden by the HaMajoa family for 20 months in the hayloft above the family's pigsty. Francis would cry every day, and her family tried to quiet her down, but she resisted. There were 6,000 Jews in Sokol before the war. When Francis and her family were liberated in 1944, 30 Jews survived, and the righteous family saved 16 of them. Francis helped to create a film based on excerpts from her grandfather's diary and from their time in hiding. Francis serves on the board of the Drew Holocaust Genocide Center and continues to speak about her experiences after decades of being silent. Please stand. Cantor Joseph Milavani will read the El Malei Rachamim. We ask that you remain standing for Kaddish B'tzibur, which will be led by Holocaust survivor Joseph Garay.
Rachamim Shochein Bameromim Hamtzei Menucha Necheno Kanifei Ashechina B'mahalo eskedoyeshim utehorim Kezor harakiya mazirim lenishemos shisha Acheino ve'yochyoesenu anashim nashim vataf שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנחנקו ושנשרפו חיים. אל קידוש השם במחנות השמדה אושוויץ, בירקנאו, טרבלינקה, מיידנק, בוכנוולד, מאנטהאוזן, ברגן-בלזן, דאכל, גטו ורשה, גטו וילנה ומקומות אחרים באירופה בידי הצוררים הגרמנים ויוזריהם יימח שמם וזכרם. שכל עם ישראל מתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם בגן עדן התן מנוחתם לכן בואו רחמים יסתירם בסייסר כנפיו בצרור החיים אז נשמותיהם אדוני לקיץ הימים לך יויסם ונאמר
Yizgadal v'yizkada shemei Rabo. B'olmudiv chrisei v'yamluch v'achusei. B'chaye chone v'yamei chone v'chaye d'chol beis Yisrael. Ba'agulu v'zman kure v'imri umein. Yehi shemei Rabo m'vorach l'olam l'olam mayu. Yizburach v'yishtabach v'yispoar v'yisreimen v'yisnasei. V'yishador v'yisalei v'yisalol shemei dekitsho b'richo. Le'elu men kol b'chuso v'sheruso tishb'chuso. L'amiram b'yolme v'yamrumein. Yehi shlomo Rabo m'shemayu. V'chaim oleinu v'kol Yisrael v'yamrumein. Ose shulam b'mroimov. Hi b'rachmav yase shulam oleinu v'kol Yisrael v'yamrumein.
Please be seated. It is traditional at this point to pause for a moment of silence. Silence does not just bring words and noise to a standstill. It is an opportunity to be present, a moment to unite the spirit and the heart. May our shared silence lead us to remember our loved ones, those who perished in an era of evil and hatred. We cherish their memories and pledge to make our world a safer and more peaceful one. Please rise for the moment of silence and remain standing to join the cantor and the Hazmir International Jewish High School Choir in singing the partisan hymn.
Vi Parol sorgent das Lied von dort zu dort. Na, was hören ist die Sonne in dem Kajor. Wie a Parol sorgent zu dort, zu dort, zu dort. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Es ist nicht kein Lieden von a Feugeläufle frei. Das hat auf Haupt zwischen Wollen in der Welt. Das Lied gesungen mit na Gannes in die Hand. Das hat auf Haupt zwischen Wollen in der Welt. Das Lied gesungen mit na Gans in der Hand. Das sagt nicht keinmal, dass du gehst dem letzten Tag. Gott schwimmeln bleiben, fast sterben neue Tag. Komm in Welt noch unser Gebete schon. Es weckt a Punkt und unser Tod, wir seinen Lohn. Komm in Welt noch unser Gebete schon. Es weckt a Punkt und unser Tod, wir seinen Lohn.
On behalf of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to Holocaust, I would like to thank everyone who participated in this very special day. And particularly, I would like to thank the survivors and their family for honoring us with their presence. A gathering like this leaves us exhausted and heartbroken. We came here to remember, and remembering who and what we lost is painful. But after the pain comes the healing. Those of us in the room share a special understanding of how evil can manifest in the world. We also share a first-hand appreciation of what it means to persevere in the face of this evil, not only to survive, but to embrace life. May we each transform this understanding and appreciation into a force for healing in our hearts, in our community, and in the world. Thank you all for being here.
This concludes the commemoration.